Welcome to another episode of the Pastor to Pioneer podcast. I'm here today with Jim Britts from San Diego, California. And Jim is an incredible guy with an incredible story. I'm really excited that he's on today and he's going to get to share all those details with you. But Jim is a former pastor. Jim is a practitioner of disciple making and planting simple churches, not just in the San Diego area, but kind of all over the place. He's an author. He's written some books that we'll talk about today that are definitely worth the read. And he's dabbled in filmmaking. All kinds of things. But more than anything, it's clear when you talk to Jim, Jim loves Jesus and he loves people who are far from God. And so, Jim, I'm really pumped that you're on the podcast today. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks. It's exciting to be here.
Well, Jim, I would love to start maybe back with your story of just, how did you come to know the Lord?
Yeah, I grew up in a real strong Christian home. My dad was a pastor for 41 years.
Wow.
And so, I was in church in diapers. And so really early age came to follow him. But would say in ninth grade, I was the kid that would get kicked out of Sunday school for talking in the back, and went to a winter camp. And the speaker got up and said, most of you guys are like the disciples behind locked doors after Jesus died on the cross. You're like that on your high school campus. And he said, if that's you, stand up. And it was the first time in my life where I felt like God was speaking to me, and stood up. And we started an outreach on our high school campus called End Zone. We met in the football end zone. And I think that's where my faith really started to become my own.
That's awesome. Did you pick the End Zone because you played football, or just felt like that was a good spot to meet?
Yeah, I'm a skinny cross-country runner. It was because we couldn't find a classroom they would let us meet in. So we just said the End Zone's an easy place to meet. But it was pretty cool, except in the winter months.
Where were you in Southern California in the winter months? I mean, during that time of your life?
No, I was in Northern California, so near Sacramento. And so
Okay.
we would just figure it out. But yeah, so for sure, I look back now and I can see my apostolic entrepreneurial gifting. I didn't know those words back then,
Yeah.
but I love starting stuff.
That's awesome. So Jesus gets a hold of your heart. You start gathering with people. Like, what transpires from there? Like, what got you into like pastoral ministry? Did you jump right into that after school? Did you take other routes to get there?
Yeah, no, I was a screenwriting major at Biola University. I was going to live in Hollywood and write movies that mattered. But I was organizing
Awesome.
chapels at our school and had a chapel speaker come. And after it, he came over to me and said, Jim, I feel like God just told me to invite you to be an intern at my church in any ministry you want this summer. And it was a church that was 3,000 people, 3 years old. It had just exploded.
Wow.
And I talked to my dad, and he said, if you ever thought about ministry, you should go check this out. And the youth pastor was a guy that my dad had discipled back in college. And so I canceled an internship in Hollywood and went and worked 80 hours a week with high school kids. And I think my calling into ministry would be any one of those minutes, or I just could kind of hear the whisper of God the whole time. This is what you were put on the planet to do. So I finished with the screenwriting major because I didn't want to start all over, but then went back to that church after graduating. I was up in Sacramento and worked 3 years there. I went to seminary and then accepted a role as a youth pastor in Oceanside, where I live now. I was a youth pastor for 15 years and was planning on being the guy that did that for the rest of my life. In fact, I used to tell people I'm not going to be one of those sellouts that leaves youth ministry to plant a church. I felt like the guys, just when they were getting good, we leave. And so I was going to be the 80-year-old still leading small groups with high school kids.
Obviously, that didn't happen. What caused you to step away from youth ministry?
Yeah, so our church started planting churches, and our lead pastor said, hey, Jim, I think you were made to plant a church. Would you ever consider it? And I gave him my spiel. I'm not going to do that. And he said, would you pray about it? I said, well, I'll pray. But those times you say I'll pray, but it's
absolutely.
Yeah. So 2 days later, I'm in my house, and there's a park behind my house, and this will come in later in my story as well. But God wakes me up in the middle of the night, and part of my relationship with God is he speaks to me in this park at 2 a.m. Most of it is read the Bible and try to obey. So this is my only audible voice from God I've ever heard. But I'm there at 2 a.m, like a day or two after my pastor challenged me on the church planting thing. And I said, God, I think you have me here because about this church planting thing, don't worry. I'm not going to sell out. I'm going to do youth ministry. And I heard, like you speaking to me, he said, Jim, I'm not asking you to leave youth ministry. I'm asking you to plant a church. And that's how the birth of Parkside Church came. Sitting next to a park and that it was unapologetically all about the next generation. Right? When you look at the stats of the next generation, every church should be in emergency mode when it comes to kids. So we were all about reaching the next generation. I don't know if there's rules on church planting, but that's what we did, and did that for a lot of years, and saw a lot of exciting things happen, and planted churches from that, and had all kinds of programs focused on kids. Partnered with every school in our area, fed a lot of hungry kids, tutoring, stuff like that. So
Amazing.
that's how I got into church planting.
When you when Jesus would tell you to go to the park at 2 in the morning, why do you think he told you to do it in the middle of the night? Like, why not 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that question. That's great. I don't know. I just know that I would wake up, and it'd be this really strong sense that if I didn't get up right now and put some shoes on, that I would be missing out on something God wanted to say to me. And like my
Wow.
heart beating fast, and it was just a sense of expectancy. And you can actually track a lot of our life based off these times in the middle of the night. And
Come
so,
on.
like, I'll tell my wife, "Well, I was up at 2." Oh boy.
What what
uh,
what do he say?
yeah, what would he say? Yeah, and really, really powerful times with him where he's shown up in some supernatural ways. So I don't know why not in the afternoon. Maybe he just wanted to be quiet,
Yeah.
or it took
Yeah.
an obedient step to get out of bed. I'm not sure.
Like, how often are we talking that this would happen? Like, every week, every couple
No,
months,
no.
every year?
Yeah, maybe twice a year. So
Okay.
not that often, but enough where and we've moved since, but we're like maybe a half mile from that park now. It used to be like our backyard, and so I found I go way less. And maybe that was just a season, but I did go like 3 months ago. God called me, get up and walk the half mile over to the park at 2 in the morning, and said some really significant things that I needed to hear. So that's
Come
just been
on.
a yeah, nothing I sure grew up with. I mean, I grew up at Conservative Baptist Church, but I've seen God do some pretty crazy stuff in this park, and I'm excited when He wakes me up.
Okay, I got more questions about that because you grew up in a tradition that maybe doesn't emphasize
Sure.
that you can hear God's voice, and maybe some would even say, no, he doesn't speak that way anymore. It's only through the Bible. Um, what was that like that first time? How did you know like this is the Lord? What made you decide to actually go and follow it versus go, this is just me. The Lord doesn't speak this way.
Yeah, it was almost like uh, Samuel, like God calling
Wow.
me to the
Wow.
park. And I'll even tell you just real briefly. I haven't shared this in years. So I'm there, standing in the middle of this kind of big giant grass area, and um, and I'm looking up at the sky and just kind of blown away by God. And, you just think sometimes more clearly when it's just you're in a different space in the middle of the night. And and I sensed God just say, "Jim, ask for anything." And so I said, how about a shooting star?" And this massive shooting star, man, I've not seen hardly any in my whole life, goes flying across the whole sky right in that moment. And I'm
Wow.
like, I mean, so all of a sudden it's like I got to take off my shoes, right? This is a holy moment. And I just said, God, how about another one? And another one goes flying across. I'm like, so I'm starting shaking here, and I'm like, and so I said, God, this is asking too much, but could I? I mean, these are the two best shooting stars I've ever seen in my life, right after each other. And then I heard God say, Jim, I just killed 2 stars for you. That needs to be enough. But I mean, and then it just poured into this amazing. So I think that was my first time ever, and then so many things have happened from that. But yeah, just encounters with God.
How important we're gonna get back to your story. I just got a ton of questions based on this. Is how important do you think it is for us to like really be able to have these kind of encounters with the Lord and like realize that Jesus is the risen King. He is alive. He is like working among us, and he wants to speak to us because so much of the world that you and I live in of disciple making, it's about simple listen and
Yeah,
obey,
yeah,
and it feels different to when you have those encounters, you hear his voice, and even if it's not that every day, but when you can point to the fact that like, not I've had those, I know he's alive and
yeah.
powerful and real and in the midst. How how much different obedience feels to that versus I'm reading a list of rules and commands in the Bible to just go obey. So how important is that for people in having those kind of encounters with the Lord?
Well, for me, it's sure been really powerful, and I would say it's it's come in the context though of I'm up early every morning in prayer on the couch I'm sitting in right now, in God's word, listening. I'm a journaler. And so, and I would just call that, and that's the meat and potatoes of just walking with God.
Yeah.
But the ordinary, where it's not every morning something spectacular happens, but it is amazing, like just being with God. And I think if you have that context of going every day, I'm going to try to obey you and what you've called me to do, usually through your word, then he's like, I can trust you with more. And then I'm going to give you space for other things. So the person who's going, hey, I want to have an encounter like the shooting star, I would say, we'll start by just going, hey, am I up every morning going, God, how do you want to talk to me in ordinary ways? I want to be available. That book, My Heart Cries Home, and the idea of, you've seen that old one, but that God's waiting in the living room for you. So it's not so much that we just meet with God for our own benefit. God actually wants to meet with us, and we're standing him up for a date when we choose to sleep in or not make that time available. I think from that then comes the really amazing things of our ordinary, just prioritizing him.
I think that's so wise, man. And I appreciate you sharing that. And the reason I want to pause on that because like what has happened consistently throughout your walk with Jesus and following him has been a heart of surrender to him, a heart of wanting to follow and obey him. But it just comes out of this deep wanting to know him, a deep connection with him, a deep spending time with him, and then responding to him as you encounter him. And I just think I'm really grateful you share some of the details of that because I think it's easy to gloss over and be like, oh yeah, God said this and I went and did it. And God said this and this is where I'm at today. It's like, yeah. Okay, great. But how? And so I'm grateful that you would share some of the more intimate details of what that looks like for you.
Yeah, and that's an easy transition to my story as people are watching this. So I'm 5 or 6 years in to leading this church that's going really, really well. We had planted several churches already from our young church and baptizing a ton of people, a couple services. And God calls me to the park again. There'd been several times between that, but I would call it maybe the most influential one ever. And I'm sitting there in this park and said, God, why do you have me here? And this wasn't audible, but this was whatever that level is right below that. It's very thin, where you're clear that God's speaking to you and you need to make
Yeah.
some major life decisions because of it. And he said this almost word for word, Jim, I love the story of your church, but you've missed the whole point of what I told you to do. I told you to make
Ooh.
disciples, and you're not.
Wow.
And I immediately, pushed back. I'm like, God, what are you talking about? We're planting churches, we're baptizing people. Man, I'm at least doing a better job making disciples than my other church planter friends. I felt like, but then I remembered who I was arguing with, and
Wow.
immediately was humbled, and that started me on a journey of first of all just studying a lot more about disciple making, which in a sense we were doing, but I think for sure not to the level of God, what God was calling us to, and sure, definitely not reproducible and multiplication. And I read a lot of books just by guys in the U.S., and that led me ultimately to reading some books and God bringing some strategic people in my life that started telling me about disciple making movements and church planting movements that I'd never heard of. I'd bumped up against it before. We'd had some people that we'd partner with, other parts of the world that I realize now, oh, that's what they were doing. I just didn't know it. And I was reading blogs late at night by a guy named Chris Galanos, who's become now a real close friend. And reading them going, man, this guy read the exact same books that I read in the same order that I read. And he had a missionary or a guy from the other part of the world, just like me. And I emailed him way too late on a Saturday night for a guy who's preaching the next morning. And he emailed me like the next morning and said, and I'd actually met him before and didn't even remember I'd met him in a whole other context. But he said, Jim, it sounds like you need to go through this training called Disciple Making Movements. And it's like not for 6 or 7 weeks. And I'm a guy that is always in a rush. And so I can't wait 6 or 7 more weeks. And this is a year after the middle of the night prayer time, which meant I was a pretty, I think, lousy guy to work for leading this church, because everyone in our staff is like, it's going so great. I'm like, but God's not pleased. And so I go through this training though. I think it's the summer of 18. And it's like the whole time, it was just 12 weeks of really just Bible studies on Zoom with people from around the country. So I could hear the whisper of God just saying, this is what I wanted you to find. That
Wow.
the story that I had in me from a year before that was still there was finally starting to have some peace. And there were some truths in there that were really convicting, like, Matthew 9:38, I'd preached many times, I'm sure memorized that the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few, pray to the Lord of the harvest for more workers. I just had never made the detailed, or the obvious observation um, that Matthew 10 was a detailed description of what a worker was. And as I look at it, I'm going, my life looks nothing like this. And I'm an evangelist. Like that would be my gifting. I've never raised up anybody like this, and I don't know anybody who lives like this, except maybe if they're on a mission field. And so, in a lot of ways, the last 7 years maybe now have been a course correction of how can I live as be a harvester in the harvest field. Not saying that people who don't do it exactly like that aren't, but at least how Jesus defined it and how he described it and how he sent his people out trying to live that way. And it's been an amazing journey.
Wow. Well, before we dig in more into what is that looking like now, I want to, you said something I think is really intriguing and important. You had said you came to the realization that God wasn't pleased with what you were doing. So you're seeing all this stuff happen. Your staff's like, this is amazing. I mean, this is let's go. But you had come to the realization through the word, through the voice of God, hey, we're not doing what God wants us to do, and therefore He's not pleased. Uh, talk me through a little bit more of what was that like? Was that hard when you had that conviction that things needed to change, but maybe those around you weren't there yet and didn't have that same conviction you did that things needed to change?
Yeah, it was the worst. Yeah, because I'm like, I heard very clearly from God. I mean, he spoke to me directly, which is a hard thing to describe as well. Like I'm never that guy. People that say, "Thus saith the Lord," and God told me. Stephen Furtick once said, which I know he's on a different path than DMM, but he'd said, "When I hear from God, what I mean is I'm 55% sure that I heard from God," and I resonate with that. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
so just some
yeah.
humility in it. But I had heard from God, like, and not the solution, but Jim, you've missed what I've called you to do. So yeah, that was heavy for me. I'm preaching sermons every week going, okay, God, I know I'm not doing anything different than what you told me before. I'm trying to, but you got to show me what to do. At the same time, working alongside great people that were awesome
Oh
and
yeah.
totally listened, just didn't get it. And partly because I didn't get it myself. I felt like I was a jumbled mess trying to lead, not sure where to go, and throwing in all these disciple making stuff all over the place. That I look back now, yeah, none of it worked. So yeah, and I think part of that was part of the pathway God wanted me to go through, though, to find out what He wanted me to do.
Were you sharing that with the whole church and with the staff of like, hey, God's not pleased with what we're doing, or maybe more like what we're not doing? Did you share that? And if so, like, how did they receive that? Uh, were they like, oh, okay, that makes sense, Jim? Or were they like, wait, what? What was their reaction to that?
I sure shared that with staff and leaders.
Okay.
Uh, I I don't think I shared that with the whole church. We were a couple years old. It almost been all conversion growth, so new people. So that felt like a dangerous grenade to throw in there. Like,
Yeah.
hey, what you followed actually was wrong, and it wasn't wrong. Like it was legit what was happening, and I don't regret any of those years of the early ministry. I actually think it shaped me, and man, I learned in that season about kingdom. That it's not about how many people come to my church. It's about is lostness being penetrated in the city, and all that stuff added towards the DMM. So yeah, I knew I also was dealing with some fragile new believers. So I was sharing stories with them and have them go along, but at the same time, I didn't want them to know their pastor was struggling so much as well.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think so many pastors that are on a similar trajectory as you is like they realize something's off. They're not making disciples, and they start making some changes and shifts. They have that conviction, and I think a lot of us struggle. What do we do with this conviction if it's not the whole church doesn't have this conviction, or all my elders don't have this conviction, or it's just me, or how do I navigate it? It is such a messy place to be and hard to navigate that it sounds like, I mean, you were really gracious, and I think that's a great way to go. Grace and humility and compassion, yet still pursuing what God was saying to you. And so I guess I'm curious is like, as you were continuing to pursue this, you were getting training. What were those next steps like? Like, how did you start living into this while you were still a pastor?
Yeah, and meanwhile, so I'm actually on staff at another church in another city training church planters all over the West and how I had planted a church as I'm kind of a mess in the midst of all this stuff. So, and going, God had done some great things. So I just,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, it was just a little bit of a mess. But so I took our leadership team through the same DMM training. And I thought, because we already had a heart for multiplication, that they would just be like, oh my goodness, of course. Yeah, everyone's got to be raised up as a disciple maker. We can send them out to plant churches and homes. This is amazing. And really great people. And as I took them through the training, anyways, I got voted down 6-1. They said, we're not doing this. Which at that point, I felt like I had two options. One was to leave, which just felt like a really rough move in terms of all these people were new believers throughout our church. And I didn't want to step away or steamroll the board, which, I'm like, I think I could take them. And to their credit, which really awesome people, they said what you just said is Jim, what if you lived this out for a while and at the same time led our church? And you can drip some of the stuff in there, but still lead our church mostly in the way you've done before. And then let's revisit this down the road. And so that was really great wisdom. And so I did that. And it moved from philosophy and like stories from around the world to what's happening here. And throw in COVID a couple months later, which honestly was kind of perfect timing. So our church met in a school and, it was hours setting up and hours taken down. We moved Sunday nights to another church. So Sunday mornings, I started having a handful of people over to my house to do DMM church. And I was so excited about that each week. And I think at the end of like a year of this, I was frustrated. Like I hadn't seen as much as I thought because I just thought, man, movement's around the corner, of course. And at the end of year one, if I had to say the biggest thing God did is God just changed me.
Wow.
Like I could read Matthew 10 and Luke 10 and go, this is a pretty good description of how I'm trying to live life. And like ideas like persons of peace have moved from theory to people's names. Because I thought before, it's hard enough to get a person in my church to join a life group. I'm going to find a lost person who's going to grab their friends and family who are also lost. And they're going to gather together, start a group. They're all going to come to Christ and get baptized. And like, that maybe in India, but does that exist here? And it does. They're all over the place. I remember, So the first one I ever met, I remember we were prayer walking, which was something new as well. And not just walking and praying, but walking up to people and saying, hey, we're out here trying to be a blessing in the neighborhood. If you could have a miracle happen in your life, what would it be? And I remember this woman named Stephanie in this apartment complex goes, I used to be in prison. My boyfriend was in prison. We had a lot of addiction issues. And that messed up my 5 kids. And my youngest one wants nothing to do with me. If I could have anything in the world, it'd be a renewed relationship with her. And I said, hey, before I share that story with you, before I pray, could I share a story with you? And I shared the prodigal son story just in my own words. And she's in tears. And I said, what do you learn from this story? And she made some observations. And how could you apply that to your life? And she made some observations and said, who could you share that with? And she said, all of my kids. I said, hey, what if you shared it with your kids and did kind of what we just did? And then get back to me. If it goes well, we'll do it again. Before we knew it, we got this group going with this woman and all of her kids, and none of them knew God. And last part I'll say on this one too is, so her boyfriend starts joining us in the meetings just with me and them to prepare them for the group. And like a month in, they go, hey, what does the Bible say about like sex outside of marriage? And so I turn, discovery, I turn to a passage and they read it and they're like, yeah, we were afraid of that. But that's what we thought. 2 weeks later, this is during COVID still, I marry them in my backyard and share the prodigal son story again there. And a lot of their extended family are there. And they go, if you want to know what happened to us, hey, come join us in a group. I mean, and we're like, this is happening in my neighborhood. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
So I just find when it becomes real yourself, right, then all of a sudden the faith is, I go out, I expect to find those people because I've seen God already do it in my life, and people that I'm journeying with, living it out as well, they start finding it as well. So that was huge. So really for 18 months, we were kind of going on 2 roads until it got really uncomfortable to do the splits. And I'm like, okay, I'm spending way too much time writing sermons and I don't want to do that anymore because nobody does anything with them anyways. It's what I felt like.
I agree.
I planted the church and we had multiplication in our DNA and I still was really frustrated with that. And so I met with the board and the staff again. I mean, we had meetings, but at a retreat, and I recast the vision. And I think this time because for sure the Holy Spirit, there was a little bit of leadership change. And I had stories of like, this is what God was doing. The second time around, they said, yeah, I think we should do this. And we prayed over it for a while. We didn't totally know what that meant, but we said, okay, we still couldn't meet on Sunday mornings, at least in the church where we were meeting at. And so we stopped our Sunday morning gathering and had all those people come to Sunday nights to try to turn that into a hybrid kind of transition model where I would talk for like 5 to 7 minutes. And then we'd break into disciple making communities, do discovery Bible studies. We'd have a meal each week together. Once a month, we would cancel all that, well, except the meal. And we would just share stories of disciple making with an open mic. And that was cool and exciting. And we lost a lot of people. We're like, what happened to this church? But I also found it was really hard to generate momentum when I would say maybe a third of the people were really into it. And 2/3, like were in because this is the only church they'd ever known and they love the community. But I will statements and prayer calendar were like dividing lines. Like, I'm not going to do that. And I don't mean like they would, let's fight over it, but just we're not going to do it. But this is our church, so don't tell me what to do. And so it got to a point for us. We did that for a year. That just said, I think if God's calling us to go all in, we got to be with people that just want to do this. And we were planting our last normal church that was kind of a holdover because of COVID. And so I met with that guy and said, hey, you got to go. Like, we got to send you out. And it was going to be probably more similar to other churches that were what we had been in the past. And so that fall, which had been almost 3 years ago now, we had every family in our church over at our house for dinner one at a time, or lunch or a meal. We just said, this is not something we want to get up on stage and say, here's what's going on. We want it to be over conversations with people who we loved, and most of them we'd seen come to Christ and baptized, and just shared. And none of them were surprised. They knew me. But hey, we're going a really different route. We're moving our church to our house, and we're looking for people that want to go all in with the stuff that we've been talking about, which just means really you're in two groups. You're in this one, which is a church. We're going to call it a simple church. And the one that you're temporarily trying to start among lost people, that's going to become a group that becomes a church. And not that you have to be perfect at it, but that's the win. And you're excited about accountability towards that. And so we, for months, did that and had to tell people, don't go share this with others. And so I think every single person who's in our church, we're still friends with. Most of them are still on my prayer calendar with, and they understood. And we said, hey, we realize we're the ones that's changed, not you. But this is what God's really calling us to. And hey, this guy who you love, who we're getting ready to plant a church, go with him. Like if you're looking for it to be more similar, or walk them to other churches in town. So at the end of all that, we had 12 families that say yes. And that was, if it's 25, so January of 23, we started that. Of those 12 families, 8 really meant it. And I would say it was, we learned a lot, but it was exciting. But then some families had to move, and we're kind of learning these things, and so we're doing the discovery Bible study and accountability of what God's doing each week. And it was pretty exciting. And I would just fast forward to the end of the first year, though. We were down to 3 families, not because families had walked away mostly, but because they were moving. And so I remember turning to my wife and saying, what do we do if everybody leaves? Like, are we, I'm just, I want to achieve in life, and felt like that would be the ultimate failure as I'm trying to obey God and what he's called me to do. And my wife, Rachel, said something that was just so massive. She said, I guess we would just wake up as a family. We've got a son and 2 daughters, and we would just do this. This is what God's called us to. So we would just continue on. And so just that idea, I feel like, the song, None Go With Me, Still I Will Follow, was in my ears. And that just gave me great confidence. Yeah, we're going to just keep going. And really, at the year point, God started bringing about our church. And the people that came were people that came for this very reason. And we had said from day one, you're not allowed to come to our church casually. Like, you can come check it out once, but that's it. After that, you go through some training on disciple making movements, and it's a high level accountability. Like, you're here every week, unless you're sick or out of town. We're a tight knit family. We're going for this. I had worked too hard to lose that momentum, of like, we need people that are all in with this. And so long story short, hey, now we're, a year and a half after that. And there's, I think just over 30 that are in our church. A ton of them we've met in the harvest field that either were non-Christians that started groups, and then we just said this would be really good for them to be a part of, or were Christians that, as they were like, what the heck are you doing? Like, knocking on our door. And as we told them their story, they're like, can I come? Can I check this out? And back in the day, like when our church, was rolling, we were in the 300s. And if you would have ever passed a microphone around and said, hey, tell me stories from the last month of disciple making, we would never have a fraction of the stories that we have every week of the first hour of these 30 people sharing of what's going on. And it's just been fun to see friends move from like solid believers, church attenders, to dangerous disciple makers that are just seeing exciting things happen. And it's because, so I always say, I think the secret sauce to raising up disciple makers is a weekly gathering for prayer, celebration, and accountability. And if you get that, stuff starts to take off. And that maybe is even more important than finding a person of peace. You need that culture to then start seeing it start to explode or grow. So that's
incredible. So just to be clear, and for our listeners, you lost almost everybody, right? So you had 300. I don't know how many families that would equate to. And when it was all said and done, 12 said they would go with you. 8 meant it. And after a year, 3 families remained just because of obviously moving around. Am I hearing you right? Just that most.
Yeah. Now throw COVID into there. So we lost a lot of people with that. And people left along the way. Some for different reasons. Wasn't always for this, but yes, we became much smaller. And if you would have told me back in the day I'd ever lead a church that was, well, even 30 right now, I'd be like, no way. But we've never enjoyed church more than we do now. We love it. Our kids love it. We look forward to it each week. And we're obviously part of a much bigger community. And like all the different simple churches, we all come together every 2 months for a big gathering to share stories and have a potluck dinner. And
well, I think it's the reason why I get a little bit into some of the numbers is because I think sometimes pastors are on this journey. We are like overly optimistic, and we're like, I mean, what 70-80% of the people probably come with and make this jump with us, like at least maybe more. And I mean, story after story after story, it's what you said for a variety of reasons, right? It's just like a variety of factors, but in the end, it's just like 90% less people. And I think what's interesting to hear from your story that stands out to me is it got whittled down, and then that was kind of the new core group that the Lord was going to use to multiply. And so it's from that's beginning to multiply, mostly from the harvest, which I think is really wild.
Yeah, that was huge. Of whatever that took, we said, hey, we would rather have 10 that really were all in, right, than 50 that were kind of in. We needed to have that culture. And then it multiplies from that, because then anybody who checks out our church now, they clearly get it. And if they resonate with it, it's just, they take off, because this is what we do. This is who we are.
So I got a question for you. In the purest of the disciple making movement training that I know you've received and I have, it's always, you never invite them into your house. You always help them start their own group. And I just found it's not that black and white. And I'm curious for you. You've kind of said, hey, sometimes you've invited them into your group that you've met door knocking, or how have you navigated that? I just think that's helpful for our listeners to hear. Like, how have you navigated knowing who to bring into your group versus helping start another group?
Sure. Yeah. There's 2 kinds of people I'd say we're looking for. And so they're really different situations. We're looking for potential persons of peace. We call them P-pops. And then we call them P-dubs, potential workers. And these are already Christians that, are just going, is there something more? So if it's a potential person of peace, absolutely, we're going to help them start a group, and they're not even going to know that we have this other church going on. And in a couple cases, as they've started groups, come to Christ, seen lots of baptisms, we've just found, man, this person is a catalytic leader, and it would be really helpful for them to be around some strong other Christians. That could be a coaching group, but that could be our simple church. And we tell them, hey, if we do this, we want to make sure you get this. You can never stop the group you're doing or stop, pedal to the metal on living out this disciple making stuff. but I think it'd be helpful for you to be around in a culture where we're living this out. So it would not be come to our group instead of that. It would be, hey, we think this is going to help you with that. A number of people in our church are also people that we met that were already Christians, or maybe not involved in a church, but were already there. And so they were already inspired by the idea of we were making disciples. So there's a woman named Carmen who was a Catholic, and she now says, hey, I used to serve the church, now I serve God. But she was so excited. She said, this is amazing. Yeah, I want to get trained. And she immediately got 4 or 5 of her neighbors together to start a training. And a number of them are still journeying with us and stuff like this. She started a group with her family. And when I invited her to come do this thing, she so excited, and she's just caught it. And now she's in actually a national coaching group. And she's just gone after it. But she's someone we met knocking on our door. Over half our church are people that we met either knocking on a door or in some sort of out among the harvest. But a lot of them were people that were already Christians and just were so excited for what we were doing.
That's awesome. So is there any other category of people that you run across if they're on a P-dub or a P-pop, or is it like if someone's just like, hey, I'm open to the gospel, I think, what would you do with them in that case? So they're maybe not maybe it's helpful for our listeners to describe, like, how do you describe and define a person of peace, and how is that maybe different than just someone that just might be open to the gospel?
Yeah, we would say we're first looking for people who are spiritually interested. And that just means they're open to hearing a story. And that could be meeting them, intentionally knocking on doors, or I've got all kinds of ministry going on with my daughter's soccer team and the parents, right? So I actually don't feel like everyone's called to go out and meet complete strangers all the time. But are they open to hearing a story? And we discuss it. So we'll just share it casually in our own words. And, what do you learn about God? How could you apply that to your life? A real simple conversation. The last question we ask is, hey, could you think of anybody else in your life that'd be encouraged by that story? Hey, what if I texted you the story right now? And then after you share it with them, ask the questions. What do you learn about God? How could you apply it to your life? And if it goes well, let me know, and I'll tell you another story. And we would call that person then a spiritual sharer. They're just willing to share it with somebody. A lot of times it's their husband or wife or one of their kids. It's a really low level ask. And if they do that for several weeks in a row, and the conversation we're having is usually like 10 minutes. Like, okay, here's the next story. It's really simple. It's on the sidelines of soccer practice, and let's go through it. Okay, and you're going to pass it on. If they'll do that, then we sit down with them, and usually it's have lunch or have coffee. For sure, this is in person, and we walk them through a discovery Bible study. And we just here's the piece of paper, here's the questions. We've been doing a portion of it, but here's the whole thing. And we'll take turns. I'll ask question 1, you ask question 2. And we get to question 10, on our sheets, question 10. Really, it's question 7 in a DBS. But who are you going to share this with? And we like to give 3 options. We train people to this. We say, hey, option 1 is you don't have to do anything. This is your life. Do whatever you want. Option 2 is, hey, here's this sheet. And on the side of it even has like creation of the cross and some of the stories of hope. Hey, you could use this from time to time with your family as something that would help you. And you don't even need me. Here's the sheet. Or option 3, we say, hey, when we met that first time, I just want to be honest. We're always looking for what the Bible would call a person of peace. It's in the Bible. And person of peace is someone who's spiritually open and wants to grow and learn about God. And they could think about other people in their life that would want to go on that journey with them. And if that were you, I would help you start a group with some of your friends and family where you would go through this. And I wouldn't be there, but I would help you prepare for it. And if that were the case, I wouldn't say, good luck, here's this sheet, but we're going to meet each week just like we did right now. And I'm going to help you get ready to lead that group. And if they say option 3, then we would call that, and they start to do it, that's a person of peace. So, and I'd say this, here's what we've learned. The reason why we give 3 options instead of 2, why not just say, you want to do it or not, is we found a lot of people have a hard time saying no. And option 2 is the way to say no without saying no.
Wow.
Right. So, and if they say option 3, they really mean it, because they've actually bypassed option 2 and they're saying, yes, I want to continue to meet with you. And so these are people worth investing. And that's then we really step in. So we don't call them a person of peace till they start that group. And then we'll go like once or twice just to show them that they're friends and family, that they're not weird, that person they're meeting is not a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon, and that, and then we start the group from there. So that's kind of the process that we use.
Jim, that's brilliant. I love that aspect of the third option because you're right. And then what ends up happening, you probably find this too, is they say yes, but they don't mean yes, and so you get ghosted after a while, or it gets kind of weird, like this kind of getting out of it in the future because they never meant the yes in the first place. So that's brilliant,
And
man.
if you go to Discovery Bible Study too quickly, you overwhelm them. So we've learned even that step of a
Oof.
spiritual sharer before a person of peace was massive. And if they get stuck on spiritual sharer, you've not spent that much time on them. But they're much more likely to be a person of peace if they've already been passing the story on to at least somebody in a really easy way. And you've grown a friendship because this has gone on for 5 or 6 weeks. We say you spell person of
Come
peace,
on.
Friend. Like if there's not a friendship there, nothing happens. So um,
Come on. I can imagine some of our listeners, if they're a pastor, they're probably thinking, okay, well, Jim, well, how do you like naturally share one of these stories or that come to mind about Jesus? Because when you're pastor, you're sharing them because they're sitting facing you for 30 minutes and they're expecting that.
yeah.
How do you do that? How do you enter into one of those conversations at the soccer field, at the grocery store, in a neighborhood, in a natural way?
Yeah, that's what's fun is setting up people that it's I think a lot easier than we think. So we sure use the conversation quadrants, which I guess people here know of, going from casual conversations to meaningful ones, where we were talking about stuff that matters, finding out their pain points, moving to spiritual conversations where you drip God, and then ultimately to discovery conversations where you share a story. But so with like I'm meeting with 4 different dads on the soccer team, and they've all started groups with their families. None of them are Christians. What I like to do is really early on, it's a competitive team. So like we're journeying with these guys for at least a year is as I'm getting to know them, but I'll just say, hey, I'm trying to grow in the habit of praying for people that I see regularly. I'm stuck seeing you twice a week at practice. Could I put you on this thing I have called a prayer calendar? It just means I'm going to reach out once a month with a text saying, how can I pray for you? And I found 100 out of 100 people say yes to that.
Come
And
on.
just about everybody responds. And so they go, great. And then I'm just being a normal friend with them and finding out stuff going on in their life. But there's at least automatically a rhythm of once a month where they text me back with something going on in their life. And I've just found the more that you do that regularly, the more they open up. And if it hasn't already happened in a natural conversation, through a text back, they share some pain in their life. And obviously, I've already gotten into spiritual, right? I'm praying for them. But then I will, the next time I see them, go, hey, I've just been praying for you in that thing you're going through. Like a couple of our dads have gone through some divorces in the last year on our team. Hey, and a story came to mind I just thought would encourage you. Can I share that story with you? And I've just found 100 out of 100 people say, wow, first of all, thanks for thinking of me. That's like the most encouraging thing you can say to somebody. I was thinking about you when you weren't there about what you're going through, right? Nobody does it. And then, wow, you have a story specifically for me? Yeah. And then we just share it and go, what do you learn about God from this story? How could you apply that to what you're going through? And they share and go, hey, anybody else in your life? A lot of times, like your daughter who's on my soccer team, would they be encouraged by that? Yeah. And it's the exact same pathway. So I go, and if you don't have their number, the brilliance of just going, I can text it to you, is they give you their number right then and you can follow up. But then they
Come
go,
on.
yeah, that was great. Well, hey, you want to do that next week at practice? Awesome. Let's do that. So um, the prayer question's easy. My wife, really different personality than me, but like she's at was at a kid's party, one of our kids' parties, but a lot of parents still come to them. And so she just starts talking with this mom, and the mom shares just mom stress, in her life. And my wife, a couple days later, sees her at the school and didn't know her before, and just said, "Hey, just want you to know I've been praying for you." So she just goes it slower. And then the woman was like, "No way, that's amazing." And a couple days later, she just said, "Hey, I'm still praying for you." And the story came to mind. Can I share with you? And she shared the story of Jesus calming the storm, and exact same process, but just like over some steps. And so that anyone can do this, and it's never natural. And we teach people the moment that there's awkwardness, back away.
That's
You're only
good.
looking for people that are going, man, I'm gladly welcoming this, because clearly that a person of peace is going to be somebody that, man, you're an answer to prayer for them, even though they don't know it.
That's so good.
You
Yeah,
know?
not to blow past those boundaries or the awkwardness to be like, you just need to hear more of it, and then you'll come around. I think that's so wise. I do. Things that come to my mind as I hear you talk is like one, man, it really ups the bar, making sure that we not only know stories to pull from, but
Yes.
that we're good storytellers and
Yeah.
that we can tell these stories well. And I think for me personally, that's a good conviction. But one of the things that I'm taking away from what you said that's I think really helpful is I just did this yesterday with a guy. I was in a conversation and I brought up a story. It makes me think of this story, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I left it there. I was like, well, what do you think about that? Versus I love the intentionality of the questions that you're talking about of, hey, what does that teach you? What do you notice? Or what does that teach you about God? Or how do you think you can apply that to your life? Like including some of those questions more specifically, like I'm taking notes going, I'm trying that next time. So I'm personally taking a lot out of what you're sharing, man.
Well, it's the thing of, right, in DMM, which is one of the biggest takeaways for me, was disciple to conversion. And so that means I think you're discipling people long before they would ever even know it,
Yeah,
which is so
for
different
sure.
for me than I'm trying to get my person to pray, my guy to pray a prayer or get them to come to church. There's no pressure. I'm just, right. We're just having normal conversations, but God's coming into it, and God opens up doors all over the place. So yeah, knowing that we teach our people to have at least 6 or 7 stories down that you could just say. And I'll tell you this: stories that you think you don't. Meaning, you go, oh yeah, I know feeding the 5,000. My guess is if you don't spend an hour working on that, not having have it down word for word, but being able to say it casually and not missing details, you'll need some time to get it down. And God's word is powerful, and the more we veer from it, I think the more we lose power. So you want to be able to say it casually, but at the same time, say it very clearly to people. So yeah, we have all our people, and here's my favorite one. I'll just say my favorite story is the 10 lepers story, because it works in any situation. So if you never know what story to share, or you need a first story, Luke 17:11-19. Man, everybody is grateful for it. And it's just this powerful truth of there's a big difference between being grateful and expressing gratitude. What parent doesn't want their kid to learn that lesson? That I need to actually say thank you. And so they're like, wow, my family's going to be better because of this story. Of course I want to hear another one. So anyways, we love,
Brilliant.
yeah, it's been real helpful.
Oh my gosh. Well, so I'm curious now. You're doing this in your own life. You got your simple church, 30 people in your home. What it, what's going on beyond that? Is like pockets of stuff bubbling up? Is it in your area? I know you're involved in stuff overseas. What it was just a kind of a snapshot of what ministry and life looks like for you now.
Yeah, well, so I'll start with I used to get paid as a pastor for 22 years, and so I knew going down this route that if as our people started to leave our church, that financially I probably gonna have to figure out another route. And I really
Yep.
wanted to model for people in our church that you can make disciples without being paid to do it. And so me
Wow.
and a friend started a business in real estate investing. If you ever seen signs along the side of the road that say "We'll buy your house for cheap," we're those guys. Those aren't our signs, but that's what we do. And
Awesome.
long story short, years later, I work 10, 15 hours a week max, where we find that small percentage of people that are willing to sell their house at a discounted rate because of some major problems in their life, and that pays all the bills for us. So it leaves me lots of time for ministry. And the people that need to sell their house for cheap usually have a lot of issues, and they need a pastor in their life. And so we've started so many groups through that. And I'm sure willing to talk to anybody. And I got this from one of my mentors, Chris Galanos, who was doing this. But there's a lot of pastors that it's called wholesaling. A lot of
Mm,
pastors do this, and it is made for ministry. And so I'm sure willing to be a conversation to help people
I love
with
it.
that. But so,
Well,
and
I'll include your email address and some of your
yeah,
contact
totally.
stuff in the show notes so people can reach out.
Cool.
Is that cool?
Yeah, for sure. And then I'd say also, um, I've sure learned that if you dive into this disciple making movement stuff, it is an invitation to rejection. You're going to get rejected more in your life than you ever have before. So if you'd have told me, hey, years into this, where we're at, in some ways I've been really frustrated. So I'll start with locally. We have some neat things going on. We found lots of persons of peace. We've seen supernatural things happen, and all of our faiths have grown. We've seen groups start. We're starting a group tonight with a woman named Fran, who we met knocking on her door, who's getting evicted a couple days later. She's got 9
Mm,
siblings. She's trying to get all of them to come to this
wow.
group tonight. So really cool stuff like that. And we've seen some of those generation one groups become churches where they all come to Christ. You baptize the person of peace, get out of the way, and watch them baptize the rest of the group. I mean, that's so exciting. Uh, we've struggled with generation two, honestly. So we've seen generation two groups start. A number of those generation two churches we've not seen happen yet.
Mm,
And I
mm.
felt like we've had so many that are close. Even right now, there's some that I'm like, I think could happen, but they're also always, I feel like, about to die. It's like it could
For
become a
sure.
Generation 2 church, which then, man, we're taking off. And it also, we've seen it happen. We're like, what the heck happened over the last 3 weeks? And when God wants to battle, when God wants to build, Satan wants to battle. And so, man, spiritual warfare is like crazy. Baptism is like a total battle, right, for these things. And so prayer is raised up like crazy. So I would just say we have lots and lots of groups that have started, and we've seen tons of people in our church start new ones. And a lot are still going. Some have started and stopped. We've seen churches. There's a group of simple churches that meet together regularly. Today, I'm going to be in a meeting with people, leaders all over San Diego County and Orange County, just north of us, that we get together once a quarter. So locally, it's been good. We're not knocking on the door of movement, but I'm never going to do anything different, I think, than this. Like, I mean, I'm sold. And I believe God's going to bring a movement to our area locally. If he doesn't, I'm okay with that. But like, here's not even the best part, just locally, is like my kids have picked this up. My youngest daughter, Josie, is 10. And so, she gets, disciples of Jesus make disciples. So she went to a couple of her friends at her elementary school, public school, this last year and said, you want to start this thing called a discovery group? By the end of this last year, 25 kids came every single week to this thing. Almost none of them are Christians. And so she's just taken off. My other kids, same thing. We have a group going this summer, and the other two are a part of leading it with some of their friends. So if you stripped out everything, and I just talked about the story of what's going on with my family, I'd be all in with that.
Come on.
But then the doors also opened up, man, for sure, internationally. I think before we had partners that we financially gave to. Now I've got really close friends that I've worked with. And so I've been to India a bunch of times. I would tell you, if you're on this journey and you haven't gone to a place where they're seeing movement happen yet, if that's possible, sometimes it's dangerous. In some parts of the world, it's really dangerous to do that, and you do more harm than good. Don't go. But if you have the ability to do something like that, man, that will just explode your faith. But so a couple years ago, a friend of mine says, hey, I met this guy, this Indian pastor on Facebook, and I've been doing some training stuff with him, but he wasn't a DMM guy. And he said, I think he would be great for DMM. And I'm thinking, I'm not trying to judge here, but this guy maybe is just trying to get money from you. So, but I said, I'll meet the guy once. And he was really awesome. And I'm not going to say his name. I don't know if it's safe because we're going to post this. But I took him through the training one-on-one. There's this 8-week training. And he was amazing. I'm teaching him on persons of peace. And the next week he's like, Jim, I think I found two. And they got healed to find persons of peace. And he said, they've already gathered their family and saying, what do we do next? He said, Jim, what do we do? And I'm like, oh, I've never been here before. Well, here's what Discovery Bible Study is. Oh, great. Okay. I'll use that. And so I've now been coaching him for 2 years. I felt just recently, I'm part of a group that we have this goal of seeing 1 million disciples and multiplying movements by 2028. And so I was asking the question, what does that require of me? And I felt that said, it requires of you to go to India and just hang out with this guy and his leadership team to really see, is this what God's doing, and hang out with them in person. And so I hung out with my son, went with me too. We spent 5 days in a hotel with this guy and like 8 of his leaders. They've got 383 churches in the last 2 years have been planted. They believe that number is going to be doubled by the end of the year. I just prayed with them last Saturday on the phone. I connect with them once a month. And I meet with this guy once a week. And I just go, okay, so it was worth it for my 5th grader. At the same time, if all God wanted me to do was meet this guy in India, then, man, that's worth it. Like, it's a movement. They have 9th generation churches of these 283 churches, 383 that have started. And this guy never heard of DMM before. And so that, I'm sure excited about that. And I'll say one other one. So I was sharing that with a group that I was helping coach about just coming back from India. And I said, so if someone like from another country reaches out to you on Facebook, don't just write them off. Who knows? And the next morning I'm spending time with God, and I was challenged, like, Jim, you don't really are on Facebook ever. What if other guys have been reaching out and you're not doing what you told people to do? So I got on Facebook. Sure enough, the day before, a guy had reached out for something. And so I just messaged back at 4:30 in the morning and said, hey, my name's Jim. What state are you in? And he was in India as well. And he told me it was the state right next to my other guy. And I said, he said, hey, do you have time to talk right now? I'm like, yeah, it's early in the morning. Nobody's awake in my house. All right, get on the phone. So I'm talking to him on the phone. And I go, well, tell me your story. And he goes, my dad was a pastor. And but we just never saw people really come to Jesus. and I was a businessman, and I was convicted by the Great Commission. And he said, so I Googled Great Commission ministry. And on my sixth or seventh time doing that, I downloaded this like 12-week PDF training, and I just took myself through it. And he said, it was really crazy stuff, Jim. I have not told him anything about my story. He said, we're like, do churches and homes, and don't preach anymore. Instead, it's about discovery. And he said, so I've been doing that for the last bunch of years. And now we've got over 100 guys on our team that are doing this. And we've got over 700 churches that are doing this. And I go, it sounds like you ran into something called disciple making movements, and you're using a tool called Discovery Bible Study. And he just got quiet, and he goes, how do you know those things? And I said, well, because they've wrecked my life. And it says, it sounds like they've wrecked your life as well. And he said, I've never met somebody who knew those things outside. And I said, I was just in India a couple of weeks ago, coach a guy I've been coaching who's seen a couple hundred churches as well. And this guy starts getting teary-eyed. For me, it's 5 a.m. Jim, I've been praying every day for several years that God would bring someone into my life that would coach me, because I have no idea. We're stuck on generation 2. And so I just took him through the training. We've been meeting every week since then. He's become a good friend. I mean, there's people like that that are out there, right? So, and I've got another guy in New Zealand that I'm working with, a guy in Pakistan I'm working with. And so, and here's the thing I learned in this stuff too that was so huge. Because I thought, okay, I'm stuck on our second generation stuff die. So like, I'm going to go help a guy that's, seeing a movement. Come on, ridiculous. And here's what God's told me and taught me is, first of all, it's pretty arrogant to think what we need is God's word and God's spirit plus an effective Jim is going to be able to help this guy. That's ridiculous. It's going to need to work for me in that way for God to be able to use me. No, clearly I am the weak link in what's needed to help this guy. But then the second part is, what is needed is I need to be a practitioner, and that I am doing it, and I'm waking up each morning and living this stuff out, and trying to look for persons of peace and finding them. And while I don't have the generations they do, and I'm a little jealous, but because I'm living it out, I actually can walk alongside and help them. And when we're coaching, they're praying for my people, I'm praying for their people, and God just goes, great. The harvest is more open and ready in some of these other places. So I'm getting to be a part of movements in other parts of the world. So, and the last part I would just say this is, so I was a screenwriting major back in college, but then got called into ministry, and so just kind of left. We made a movie years ago, but it's been a long time. But we were taking people through the training and just found that the training, the word movement intimidated a lot of people. They're like, I'm just trying to survive in life. I'd like to learn how to make disciples, but I'm not the person that's thinking movement. I know I'm talking to pastors here. Maybe we're all thinking that already, but the people in your churches are not. And so we just took that training and we made a prequel version of it. And we just really creative. We called it Introduction to Disciple Making, and took the same principles, but how do I actually just make disciples, and took out all the stuff about movement starting, and found people really connected. We made it shorter, but still all the same principles. And a publishing company, some guys just sat in one of the groups that we went through, and they said, could you turn that into a book? And so for the first time in years, started writing again. And we wrote this book called 21 Days to Becoming a Disciple Maker. And it's really the training just in a 3-week devotional. And that's just exploded and taken off. And so we've just found that's been a really cool tool as well to help people that you want to start a disciple making community in your church, or you meet someone and they're not open to a training, but they would read a book, and then once a week connect with them and say, what are you learning? And it's the kind of book where you're not allowed to go to day 2 until you do the challenge on day 1. So that's been part of our journey as well.
I've just started that one, and I want to keep going. I'm like, oh, this is great. I want to keep on. I'm like, nope, one day at a time. So I've not finished that one yet, but it really is excellent. And for those of you that are listening, I really encourage you to grab a copy. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. But again, it's called 21 Days to Being a Disciple Maker. Is that
Becoming
right?
a Disciple Maker.
Becoming a Disciple Maker. Awesome. And Jim, you've written other books as well. The other one that I've read of yours is The Only Number That Matters. And that was such an encouraging, inspiring read. Another one I encourage our listeners to grab. It's not long. It is very engaging. It'll pull you in. And there were parts, man, that it resonated with my story of when I was a pastor, that some good and some challenging emotions came up for me. But where you took me as a reader, that book was just so encouraging, man. I can't wait for you to write these other ones. Let's get moving here. Let's get the sequels out. I wanna hear what's next, bro.
It's been fun. Just, that God, like, he did wire me as a storyteller and writer, and years ago went to school for that. And now God bringing that back around with DMM. It's been fun how all the experiences we have in our life, right? God put it there for a reason, and the gifting he's giving you for a reason. And as you figure out what he's called you to, he'll bring that all back.
Is the best way for people to kind of get in touch with you or get some of these resources? Is it through your website of whynothere.mov? Is that the best place?
The book, that's the best place. The 21-day book, that's the best place to get it. And you
Okay.
can buy a 10-pack of the other book there. If you want to get
Okay.
the Only Number That Matters, that's a novel. So it's just a story, and there's a sequel coming out. And the novel's not DMM, but the sequel of it is. That one's probably better to get just at Amazon.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but then all the resources, Prayer Calendar, if you hadn't heard of that, or Conversation Quadrant, Disciple Making Communities, all that stuff, that's all on our, whynothere.mov. We found whynothere.com was $24,000. Whynothere.mov was $24. And MOV, people think it's movie, but it sounds like movement, right? So
Movement. Yeah, that's right. I love it.
yeah,
I always get so frustrated at those websites when they try to put a premium on it. Like, come on. That's ridiculous. Who's going to pay $25,000 for this? Not me. I'm
somebody
not
must.
doing that.
Yeah, not me. Yeah, no way.
Somebody must. It must
Yeah.
work. Anyway. Well, Jim, as we're wrapping up here, man, you just have shared such gold, such practical skills and thought and wisdom. But I would love, is there anything else that's kind of that's on your heart that you feel like you haven't shared today, or any just general wisdom that you want to encourage our listeners with today, those pastors that are on this journey from pastoring toward pioneering movement?
Yeah, when this stuff becomes personal, it'll change everything. And finding that first person of peace, which we don't use that word loosely. I think sometimes people do. I walked you through how we decide someone's a person of peace. But some of that's going to take just some confidence and faith. And I started at the very beginning about Matthew 9:38. That passage was gigantic for me. The verse right before it, it says Jesus was walking around and he saw them as harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Let me give some other definitions for those words. Harassed, life's not going well. Helpless, there's nothing I can do about it. Sheep without a shepherd, and there's no one to help me. Are there people in your city, in your neighborhood, that feel that way right now? Life's not going well. There's nothing I can do about it, and there's no one that can help me. They're all over the place. They may not say it, but they're all over the place. And if anybody would approach them, even a complete stranger, and give them a glimmer of hope, they would explode and respond. And so I think sometimes we're thinking in life, man, people are so busy. Do they need God? Are they going to accept some stranger to come out of their nowhere? No, people are walking around with that going on in their life. And so have that kind of courage of going, okay, I'm just trying to find those people. And if you have that kind of boldness and courage and that kind of mindset, you will find them. And to just know, man, I heard this too of I think, maybe I'm taking too long in my last question, but I think a lot of times we've made the lost person have to become the missionary, where we say, if you want to find God, at least in traditional style church, and any kind of church I'm on board with, right? I mean, like, we're all on the same team, but you have to leave your comfort zone, go to a place you've never been to, go to people you've never come alongside with, do stuff you've never done before. You got to jump over all these things to get there. When really clearly Scripture says we're the ones that are called to go. So we've made the lost person have to be the missionary. And God simply said, no, you go, you get out of your comfort zone. You go find people you would never talk to. You go do things you would never do. That's our role. And if you'll go meet them where they're at, you'll be blown away by how much people are ready to respond. And if you'll live that out, you'll find persons of peace, and then everything changes.
Come on, man. Well, I feel like at some point we'll have to do a part 2 and just continue to hear more of what you're learning. There's so much.
I just shared
here.
everything I know, so I don't know if there's anything.
I'm personally encouraged, and so I assume our listeners will be too. But man, I just am so grateful that we've gotten to connect recently, and I'm so grateful you'd be willing to be on the podcast and be so honest and share what the Lord's been teaching you, man. I'm so pumped.
Hey, it's been awesome meeting you. Our names are almost the same. Your
I
last
know,
name,
it's great.
your first name, and my last name. So of course we're going to be friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I look forward to whenever we get to hang out face to face. It's going to be a good time whenever that happens.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, buddy.